All hands, report to the lower compartments. We have a major fire in auxiliary. Need immediate support.
May 7, 1942. The Coral Sea, a sheet of bruised blue stretching between Australia and New Guinea. Wind skates across the flight deck of USS Yorktown, CV-5, and carries the smell of burning aviation fuel. Sharp, metallic, close enough to sting the throat. You are standing ankle-deep on a deck that still hums from launch. Steel beneath your boots vibrates with a dozen cooling engines. Sailors shout over the roar of generators. The island horizon is a gray smudge, and above it the sky is full of wings. SBD Dauntless and TBD Devastators climbing for their runs. F-4F Wildcats circling like guard dogs. Somewhere over the bows, the carrier Lexington and her planes are fighting for breath as much as for air superiority. Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher's flag is in the air, a steady, unseen pressure on every man and officer aboard Yorktown. The carrier is the heart of Task Force 17, and her heart is beating fast. Scout reports have smelled the Japanese carrier force on the move. On the aft island, signalmen squint through haze and smoke, hands inked with salt and oil as they flit semaphores and flash flags. Pilots, hooked into oil-stiff harnesses, are pinned to scarves of adrenaline. Below decks, damage control teams, chief petty officers, and enlisted men whose faces look cut from the same hard cloth, stand ready with hoses, shovels, and a discipline honed by long watches and drilled response. The first contact explodes like a thunderclap. Japanese carrier aircraft, B-5 Ankei torpedo bombers, and Aichi-D-3 Naval dive bombers appear over the horizon, black specks turning into roaring machines. The alarm bell clangs. Anti-aircraft crews double and triple their efforts. 5-inch guns begin tracking. 40mm Bofors and 20mm Oerlikon stutter into a blistering, bitter music. Tracer lances the air in golden threads. Contrails smear away from strafing runs. You feel the concussion in your teeth when a 500-pound bomb tears into the sea near the bow, throwing water at the second sky. Yorktown answers with her planes, dauntless squadrons dive, wildcats climb, pilots shouting into handsets, cursing, laughing, hoping. The carrier is both a floating airfield and a small, contained city, and that city is now under the blunt, unromantic hammer of war. A bomb finds iron and explodes with a brutality that rearranges the deck plates. Aviation gasoline ignites. The flight deck becomes a place of blistered steel and black smoke. Men move like trained hands through chaos. Fire parties, hose teams, and armored firefighters. Cutting lines, jettisoning wreckage, dragging downed airmen into the dim safety below. An SBD comes back with a wing in flame. She slams down on the deck and slides, sparks spitting from scorched metal. A radio operator slaps the mic and yells coordinates of the incoming strikes, voice raw. Amid the shouting, one thing keeps happening again and again. The rigid, efficient choreography of damage control. Crews seal compartments, shunt flooding with pumps, and shuttle wounded through narrow ladder wells to the sick bay. The carrier lists for a heartbeat and then rights herself. The invisible work of bulkheads and watertight doors doing what sailors pray steel will do. Yet the hits keep coming. Somewhere beneath the din, a torpedo splashes home. An explosion that is not cinematic but immediate, a cavernous hydraulic trauma that buckles frames and sends bolts screaming free. Fire blooms inside the hangar like a living thing, fed by soaked canvas and shattered fuel lines. The order is cold and clear. Get the survivors off the flight deck, move aircraft into sea-facing cradles, cool the mounting fires, and preserve what's left of the ship. Men in steel helmets and oil-stained dungarees become surgeons of iron, making temporary repairs that must hold while larger engines of logistics grind into motion. By dusk, Yorktown is wounded but afloat. The carrier lists, smoke pouring like a black flag, and the deck is a ruin of charred wood and twisted metal. Casualties are loaded into litters and carried to the forward mess, morphing the ship's mess decks into a makeshift ward. Pilots who minutes earlier rode the sky now sit with bandaged arms, telling the same single, exhausted story. We pulled through. Somewhere in the command spaces, voice reports crackle. The Japanese have lost carriers too. The battle is no clear victory for either side. But for Yorktown, the calculus is simple and stark. This ship is damaged badly enough that standard Navy doctrine would expect her to need weeks, perhaps months, to repair. As night closes, auxiliary crews lash what they can, and Yorktown limps away from the smoking wreckage of battle to the sanctuary of fleet support. Her boilers thrum slower now, engines coaxed by engineers who refuse to quit. The carrier is surrounded by supply vessels and repair ships. Soft-spoken, fierce men whose work will decide whether this ship returns to fight or becomes a rusting memory in the Pacific. On deck, a petty officer wipes soot from his cheek and looks at a dog tag on his chest, mouth pressed into a line. He hears the distant, private sound of men praying. At Pearl Harbor, the yard crews will survey the damage and whisper the words no sailor wants to hear. Extensive. Admirals will consult maps and calendars and shake their heads at how little time there seems to be before the Japanese will strike again. But in the cramped engine rooms and on the deck plates, a stubbornness settles into the crew like a second uniform. Yorktown refuses to go quietly into being written off. The carrier's bones creak, but the will of those aboard does not. They will fight to keep her alive. June 1st, 1942. Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, Oahu, Hawaii. The tropical air hangs thick with the smell of oil, salt, and sweat. The USS Yorktown limps into the harbor like a ghost of herself. Her flight deck gouged, bulkheads warped, paint blistered and blackened by fire. Tugboats ease her toward dry dock, water sloshing and hissing against her hull. On the docks, hundreds of men are already waiting. Engineers, welders, electricians, pipe fitters, faces streaked with soot, helmets tilted low. The damage assessment is brutal. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz himself climbs aboard with a clipboard and a set jaw. He walks the twisted deck, tracing his fingers over jagged seams, his white uniform stained with the ship's grime. The report handed to him estimates at least 90 days of repairs before Yorktown can sail again. Nimitz looks up at the horizon, the Pacific glinting in sunlight, and then back down at the blackened metal beneath his boots. Asterisk, you have 72 hours. Asterisk, he says quietly. And with that, the impossible begins. Crews surge aboard in waves. Asterisk, asterisk 1. 400 shipyard workers, asterisk, asterisk, and 2. 000 Yorktown crewmen, shoulder to shoulder, turning the damaged carrier into a hive of noise and firelight. Sparks cascade from welders like orange rain. Men balance on scaffolds over open hatches, hammering, bolting, resecuring the carrier's bones. The clang of steel echoes through every corridor. The shipyard never sleeps. Asterisk, asterisk 3 shifts, around the clock, asterisk, asterisk, as though the entire island of Oahu understands what hangs in the balance. Every bulkhead is rewired. Every torn plate is replaced. Ventilation ducts are stripped and repiped. Fuel lines are flushed, pumps reprimed, radios rewired, engines refitted. Down below, machinist mates and civilian welders work in a haze of heat so thick it feels alive. Coffee flows like water. Men eat on their feet, fall asleep where they stand, wake up at the sound of the next hammer strike. The island becomes one beating heart of labor. Hawaiian dockhands, Navy engineers, civilian volunteers, all united by the whispered rumors spreading through the yard. The Japanese are preparing something massive, something aimed straight for Midway Atoll. And without Yorktown, the U.S. carrier fleet will be outnumbered, outgunned, and out of luck. By the second night, the ship still smokes faintly from her wounds, but her spirit is coming back. Fresh steel plates glint under moonlight. The smell of new paint replaces the stench of burnt cordite. Lieutenant Commander Dixie Kiefer, Yorktown's executive officer, moves through the corridors checking progress with a flashlight, his voice hoarse but steady. Keep her together, boys. She's got one more fight in her. By dawn of June 4th, the impossible is done. The yard's chief engineer signs off on a miracle. The USS Yorktown, struck, burned, and half broken, has been repaired in just 3 days. Her flight deck is straight. Her boilers are operational. Her elevators function. The shipyard foreman writes in his log, simply, ready for sea. As she pulls away from the dock, workers line the pier in silence. Some salute. Others simply stand, caps in hand, as the gray hulk glides out of the harbor like a resurrected giant. The word spreads quickly through Pearl. Yorktown's sailing. She's going back. The crew, bone-tired and running on nothing but coffee and determination, watch Oahu fade astern. The ship creaks and groans, still bleeding from her seams, but alive. Sailors lean against the rails, feeling the engines vibrate through their boots again. The Pacific yawns ahead, endless and waiting. Admiral Nimitz watches from the pier until she disappears beyond the horizon. He knows what it means. The Japanese believe Yorktown lies crippled at Pearl. Intelligence intercepts suggest they count only 2 active American carriers, Enterprise, and Hornet. Yorktown, now risen from the dead, will be the shadow they never expect. At sea, her decks smell of new tar and fresh paint. Her crew is quiet, steady, disciplined. Below, engineers whisper prayers into the steady rhythm of the engines. The ghost ship of Pearl Harbor, they call her, reborn from smoke and fire to fight once more. Ahead lies Midway, a small atoll in the vast Pacific, but there history waits to pivot. June 4th, 1942. The Central Pacific, near Midway Atoll. Dawn rises over a calm ocean that looks deceptively peaceful. The USS Yorktown cuts through the silver-blue water, her freshly painted hull gleaming under the rising sun. Sailors gather on deck, feeling the vibration of her engines, the heartbeat of a ship that should, by all rights, be sitting in dry dock thousands of miles away. On the horizon, Task Force 17 forms up, Yorktown at the center, flanked by her destroyers and cruisers
the fuel line
like
is
royal
ruptured in
sentinels.
engineering.
The air smells of
suppressing the
salt,
fire, but taking
oil,
on water.
and anticipation. Word has spread through the fleet. Japanese forces are coming. 4 enemy carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, are approaching Midway, their planes already in the air. Below deck, Chief Engineer William Brockman wipes sweat from his forehead. His men, many of them still bruised from Coral Sea, are coaxing the boilers to maximum efficiency. Every valve and pressure gauge matters now. Every heartbeat of the ship is a gift bought by sleepless labor in Pearl Harbor. The intercom crackles. Pilots, man your planes. Launch the first strike. On deck, aircraft handlers roll out SBD Dauntless, TBD Devastators, and F-4F Wildcats. The crew moves like clockwork, choreography born from discipline and necessity. There's no time to think about exhaustion. The air war has already begun, miles ahead. In the ready room, Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie briefs his dive bomber pilots. His voice is calm, eyes sharp. We hit them hard, we hit them fast. Remember Coral Sea. They don't expect Yorktown to be here. Let's make sure they remember it. Minutes later, the deck roars to life. Plane after plane accelerates down the flight deck, tailhooks releasing, engines screaming. They lift into the sky one by one. Tiny silver specks vanishing in the clouds. The wind tears across the deck, carrying the smell of hot metal and aviation fuel. At 10 a.m., the first contact reports come in. Midway's outnumbered defenders have already bled the Japanese strike groups, but the enemy is regrouping. Yorktown's radar picks up inbound aircraft, the Japanese counterattack. Sirens blare across the ship. General quarters. All hands to battle stations. The ship transforms in seconds. Hatches slam shut. Gunners race to their posts. Damage control parties brace in shadowed corridors. The air fills with tension so thick it hums. Overhead, the black dots grow larger. The enemy is coming. Japanese dive bombers, D-3A Vals, begin their runs. The sound they make is unforgettable. The descending scream of death as they drop from 12,000 feet, sunlight flashing off their wings. Yorktown's anti-aircraft batteries open fire, spewing a wall of lead and flame. Tracers arc upward, bursting into black clouds. The sea reflects the chaos above. Fire, smoke, and sun flashing off shrapnel. The first bombs miss, sending geysers of seawater into the sky. But others find their mark. A direct hit slams into the flight deck, detonating near the forward elevator.
We've got a major
The blast
fire in
throws
engineering.
men to the deck, shattering glass, rattling every bulkhead. Another explosion follows moments later, tearing open a fuel line and flooding compartments with choking smoke. The bridge shudders. Captain Elliot Buckmaster, standing beside his officers, grips the railing, shouting orders through the din. Counterflood, bring her back to even keel. Get those fires under control. Damage control crews charge into smoke-filled hallways, faces blackened with soot, boots slipping on wet steel. Some crawl through flame and darkness to reach ruptured fuel lines, cutting valves by hand. Hoses roar to life. CO2 tanks hiss. The heat is unbearable, but they keep moving. Within an hour, Yorktown's crew performs the impossible again. The fires are contained, power restored, flight deck patched enough to launch and recover aircraft. The ship, listing and wounded, steadies herself in the water. A miracle reborn a second time. In the distance, American dive bombers find their prey. Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu erupt in flame, their decks consumed by fireballs. Smoke pillars rise miles high, curling into the sky like black monuments. Only one Japanese carrier remains. Asterisk, asterisk, Kiryu, asterisk, asterisk. It turns its vengeance toward the ghost that defied death. At 2:30 p.m., another wave of Japanese bombers zeroes in on Yorktown. This time, the hits are catastrophic. A torpedo rips into the port side, then another. The ship lurches, water flooding her lower decks. Bulkheads groan and buckle. Captain Buckmaster gives the hardest order of his career. Abandon ship. Sailors climb down ropes. Others leap into the Pacific, the cold biting their skin. The once resurrected Yorktown lists heavily, smoke curling from her wounds. Destroyers move in to pick up survivors as the sun sets on a battle that has changed everything. Hours later, as night falls, the Japanese retreat. 3 carriers sunk, 1 crippled. The U.S. Navy has won a decisive victory. But Yorktown drifts alone in the dark, still afloat, still stubborn. For days she resists sinking, as if her steel refuses to let go. When she finally slips beneath the waves, she does so slowly, gracefully, her flag still flying. The sea closes over her, and the Pacific is quiet once more. The Japanese admirals, reviewing reconnaissance reports, are stunned. Yorktown, one officer asks. She was sunk at Coral Sea, another replies, shaking his head. But she wasn't. For 72 hours, she lived again, and in that brief, impossible resurrection, she changed the course of the Pacific War forever.